Hey guys, today we're going to be checking out the brand new Marshall JCM 800 Lead Series Studio. Now, I did a brief kind of announcement at the NAMM show. When I saw this, Marshall has decided to come out with a new series of amps called Studio Series, where they added to the Silver Jubilee 20 watt lineup. So now you're going to have the Silver Jubilee 20 watt, the JCM 800 20 watt, and of course the Mark II, which is your Plexi. Now, I bought the JCM 800 because I wanted to check that out first. Having the Silver Jubilee, I was really curious because, to be quite honest, when I bought the Silver Jubilee, I wanted 800, but they didn't make anything in that platform. Now, a lot of you are going to remember when a couple years ago when Marshall did the 1 watt series. Made in the UK, they were $800 for a 1 watt amp that switches down to a 1/4 watt. These are now 20 watt amplifiers that switch down to 5 watts, also made in UK, and priced at $1,300. Now, I love the way it looks. The size-wise is pretty good. I wish, of course, in the series they would be a little smaller. If you look at the Freeman PT20 or the Freeman Runt 20, smaller platform heads. Obviously, the Mesa Boogies are smaller platforms, but, you know, I understand this is the size it is. It's fine. The important part is it's light and it's practical. This 20 watt head will rip your face off. In fact, I can't even use it in 20 watt mode. You can use it in 5 watt mode. And yes, I actually already jammed with a drummer friend of mine and I was keeping it in 5 watt mode. It sounded fantastic. In 20 watt mode, it was a little fuller, but it was louder than what I needed. So I was impressed at 5 watt mode for our practice session. Now, on the feature set, there's some new options to this head and the Plexi that the Silver Jubilee doesn't have. All 3 amplifiers have an effects loop, but they added a new button to the JCM 800 and the Plexi that lets you bypass the effects loop. I guess to make it truer, you know, because since the original models didn't have effects loops, to go ahead and take that out of the circuit. That was pretty cool. I thought that was a cool option. I'm not sure how practical a necessity it is, but it's a cool option. Just like on the original, you're going to have your high input and your low output, and they are vastly different. Your low output will clean up the amp a whole lot. In fact, it's hard to get it to break up unless you really drive it. And your high output, it not only breaks up, but it's a lot louder than the low output. Something I remember definitely on the JCM 800 Big Brother, the 100 watt and the 50 watt. It has a 3-band EQ plus a presence control, and in traditional Marshall form, they don't do a whole lot. You can pretty much run them all at 10. The presence is the most aggressive sounding thing. You have a master and a preamp control, and you can just drive the preamp control and then use the master. One of the things we'll talk about when I do the audio sample in a minute is a lot of people saying this has a lot more distortion than the original 800. That is probably true. However, I want to tell you my first impression is it feels like it's gainier because I realized that immediately I'm running at 2 and 3, volume 2 and 3 in the 5 watt mode. Something that on an 800 Marshall, you just didn't do very often. You know, you didn't really crank them unless you were at a big, you know, big place, a big room. But, you know, so I think you're actually running the head a little harder than you normally would run one of the Big Brothers. Aesthetically, I think it looks good. However, I just want to note, it's weird to me, but they made the Marshall logo smaller on the new head. I think it looked better on the Silver Jubilee. I'm really curious to see what you guys think. I think this looks more legitimate. And what's really weird, if you look at these, that's why I stacked them like this. Here, the reason I stacked them like this is they're the same size, but if you look, this does look smaller because of the smaller logo. It kind of optical illusion, but I like the bigger logo. I'm curious to see what you guys think. So you know, I already checked. If you buy the matching cabinets have the appropriate size logos. If that's something that matters, it really doesn't matter to me. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get some sound samples. I'll even do some comparisons of the amp. I'm going to use my Gibson SG, and I'm going to mic up the cabinet. Again, it's going to be the Silver Jubilee cabinet with the V30 type speakers. We'll go ahead and run a condenser mic on it, and I won't do any post-production. This will be just as raw of a feed as I can give you to give you most accurate sound, because like I said, I think a lot of it is, a lot of us are curious to see how does it actually sound. I thought the 800's clean was much fuller and cleaner and nicer. The Silver Jubilee's clean never really cleans up. So if you're looking for something with a little grit on the clean, which I like a lot of times, the Silver Jubilee, but that's something I can add a little boost pedal to or a light overdrive to get. So it's not something that I have trouble adding to this amplifier, but it's something almost impossible to take away from this amplifier. A lot of you will probably understand that the Silver Jubilee has a lot more distortion, a lot more fizz added to it. But something that's interesting about the Silver Jubilee is that in the 20 watt mode, it sounds really full and really dynamic. When you switch it into 5 watt mode, it gets quiet, but it gets even more fizzy, and there's really nothing that's exciting about the amplifier unless you really crank it up. Trying to practice at bedroom levels, it just really didn't have anything for me. So I really liked it in the 20 watt mode with turning the volume down, which kind of almost defeats the purpose, but it was at least a fuller sounding Marshall. The interesting part of the JCM 800 was it does the opposite. In the 20 watt mode, it sounds full and amazing, but in 5 watt mode, it still kind of retains all that character, it just kind of loses some of the volume. It doesn't lose all that low end and fullness. So interesting how the same kind of technology that does the attenuation has a different effect to the two amplifiers. Now, of course, you can run either one of these into an attenuator, and both of them I thought sounded really interesting when you added some delay and some reverb to them. I didn't want to do that in this video because I just wanted a bare bones video. I didn't want to show you, how great the amp would sound, because I'm sure there's going to be some fantastic demos out there of them showing what the amp is totally possible of. I wanted more of a practical review. What does the amp sound like in raw? What does it sound like with some basic stuff? And what to expect if you're looking at these two amps, because I think these two amps are now going to be the thing that you're going to look at if you're buying online. You're going to be like, hey, do I go with the 800 or the Silver Jubilee? Now, as for which one do I like better, I would really like to know your thoughts first. So this is a great time to put in the comments down below. Which amp did you like better, or which amp do you think that if you were going to choose one, would you choose, and maybe why? And to let you know my answer, although I like them both for different things and they're almost so different, I actually ended up liking the 800 just slightly more. Is even though this has 2 channels, which makes it seem more practical, more useful to the user, I found that this amp actually was more practical to what I was doing. Running it clean with pedals in front of it sounded great. Running it with just the amp sounded great. I really like the tone of it. The other thing that was interesting about this amplifier is it just reminds us how simple something can be. It just can be one channel and it sounds fantastic. I was able to get all kinds of sound out of it, including with my Tubescreamer. It just seemed like I could do everything from 80s metal to some of the modern rock to some blues. I was really excited about this. Like I said, it's really interesting that it doesn't have to have 3 channels and all this stuff. It's just a good sounding amplifier. All right, with all that being said, thank you guys for hanging out with me today. It was always fun as usual. And until next time, know your gear.